Hi, I'm Stu from Hive Mind Automation and welcome to the Hive. In this video, we're going to be creating a Pomodoro timer in Home Assistant. I'll go over the what, the why, and the how. So while I roll the intro, why don't you take a moment to subscribe, and if you hit the bell icon, you'll get notified when I release new videos each week. While you're at it, if you like what I do here and you want to support the channel, there's some affiliate links to smart home gadgets that you can buy for your own smart home in the video description below. And that supports the channel at the same time without costing you any extra. Or you can support the channel directly through my Buy Me a Coffee link. Of course, those affiliate links and my Buy Me a Coffee link can all be found on my website, hivemindautomation.com.au. With all of that out of the way, let's get started. So after that intro, you might be asking yourself, well, what is a Pomodoro timer and what is it for? The Pomodoro Technique is a productivity and time management method developed in the late 80s, where you break up your work into time-based blocks or Pomodoros. Pomodoro is the Italian word for tomato, allegedly from the kitchen timer used by the Pomodoro Technique's Italian inventor, Francesco Cirillo, when he was studying at university. The 6 steps of the Pomodoro Technique are to 1. Pick a task to work on. 2. Set a timer for typically 25 minutes. 3. To work on that task and only that task until that timer goes off. 4. Stop and take a break for 5 minutes. 5. Go back to step 2 until you've completed 4 Pomodoros. And 6. After completing those 4 Pomodoros, you then take a longer break of 20 to 30 minutes. It's suggested that using this technique allows you to focus on one task for manageable time blocks that have rigidly defined start and end points. And that means that theoretically it should be easier to get into a flow state because it's one task to focus on, and it should hopefully reduce interruptions in your workflows. The frequent short breaks also give you an opportunity to step away and refresh your brain, but it also pulls you out of hyperfocus on the one task and makes sure that you're not spending too much time on one thing. Now, during research, I found a Wikipedia article about the Pomodoro Technique, and according to that article, a Pomodoro is indivisible. If it's interrupted during a Pomodoro, either the activity needs to be recorded and then postponed so that other activity can be written down on a notepad as part of your task list, and then you can go back to what you were originally doing, or your existing Pomodoro needs to be abandoned and it's not completed. After completing any task, if you're still within a Pomodoro time block, any remaining time can then be devoted to activities like reviewing your work or reviewing your task list to make sure that your next Pomodoro time block has something productive to do. The inventor, Francesco Cirillo, also says, and I quote, "Specific cases should be handled with common sense. If you finish a task while the Pomodoro is still ticking, the following rule applies. If a Pomodoro begins, it has to ring. It's a good idea to take advantage of the opportunity for overlearning, using the remaining portion of the Pomodoro to review or repeat what you've done, make small improvements, and note what you've learned until the Pomodoro rings." And I will put a link to the Wikipedia article in the video description if you want to take a look at that yourself. There has also been some research and suggestion that the Pomodoro Technique is particularly helpful for time management for people with ADHD in a couple of different ways. Firstly, as I mentioned before, by defining exactly what you're going to be working on for a Pomodoro, it's a bit easier to direct your focus and then hopefully prioritize the right tasks for those Pomodoros. Secondly, by time boxing the task, it becomes a lot more manageable and the inertia of getting started is certainly less pronounced. And then that time box also has the additional benefit at the end of the time box, when that timer goes off, it acts as an interruption to stop you falling too far down a hyperfocus rabbit hole. And those are the things that I'm hoping to get out of it to help manage my tasks and ensure that my ADHD isn't taking me down those hyperfocus rabbit holes. If it's something that you're interested in trying out for yourself, you might find that the Pomodoro technique is not just helpful for your work, but also for study and personal projects as well. Now, it is generally recommended to take a low-tech approach to the Pomodoro technique by using a mechanical kitchen timer, a pencil, and paper. And allegedly, the sound of that ticking timer may actually be part of helping you get into the flow state. But I'm kind of throwing that advice out of the window in favor of a more technical solution for a couple of reasons. Now, firstly, in the past, when I've used the Pomodoro technique, I did find that I would lose track of how many Pomodoros that I'd completed. By extension, whether or not my next break should be a short break or a long one. Secondly, when I'm not in meetings, I like to work with some full over-the-ear headphones on, listening to music, and with active noise cancellation enabled, that can cancel out the sound of the timer going off. So rather than just an audible alert, I also want a visual indication when the alert goes off, but also an option to receive a notification when I'm not explicitly standing at my desk. And thirdly, when I go into the office, taking out a kitchen timer and having it go off every 30 minutes might trigger some difficult conversations with my colleagues. It's worth mentioning that there's several Pomodoro apps available for different mobile devices or for your computer. And I even made one of my own during my 100 Days of Python challenge. But none of them can control my lights at home to provide that visual feedback about a timer finishing. And at least for when I'm working from home, I also want a physical button to press to then kick off those timers. So before we get into setting up our home assistant to handle the Pomodoro timer, we're going to need to make some decisions. We first need to decide how we're going to handle triggering the timer. Now, in my case, I'm going to use this Zigbee button, which I've already paired up to my demo Home Assistant server. We also need to figure out how we're going to handle things like alerts, and there's a couple of different ways that I want to go about this. Firstly, I'm going to be using the mobile app notifications to send a critical notification alert to my iPhone, but I'm not going to be doing that at full volume. That iPhone notification will then also show up on my Apple Watch, which helpfully will tap me on the wrist with that notification, which is going to be great for those times where I'm working with my headphones on, and especially great even if I'm working in the office surrounded by my colleagues. I'm also going to be setting up my Miros Smart Ambient Desk Lamp over here on my B camera to turn on or change color, but I'm going to add some conditions around that to only do that when I am at home. So we're going to get started with the basics, and to do that, we're going to head over to my demo instance of Home Assistant. I'm going to scroll all the way down here to Settings, and I've got an ESP Home update. I'll deal with that later, but I need to go to Devices and Services, and I'm going to go into Helpers, and I need to set up a number of helpers in here to support the Pomodoro timers. So I'll click on Create Helper, and I'm going to start with a timer. I'm going to call it Pomodoro and just a dash and then timer. Set the default duration for 25 minutes. Can give it an icon. Unfortunately, there's no tomatoes or anything in the MDI or the default icons. So I'll just set that as a timer. We'll go with an AV timer. That should be fine. And we'll click Create, and we've got our Pomodoro timer there. I'm also going to create a button, and I'm going to call this Pomodoro Start Timer. And this is just going to be a separate way to start the timer so that if I am away from the Zigbee button, I can still start the timer. I'll click Create on that. So we've got our Start Timer button, our Pomodoro timer, and I'm also in here going to create a counter and call it Pomodoro Completed Pomodoros. I'm going to set the maximum value here to 4, and we'll create. I'm also going to create a drop-down helper called Pomodoro Next Task. I'm going to add some options. So the first task I'm going to add is Pomodoro. The next option I'm going to add is short break. And the last option I need to add here is long break, and we'll add those. Now that should probably be everything that we need. What I will do, however, is create one more counter helper and call it Pomodoro, total Pomodoros. And we won't set a maximum value, leave that as restore. So we'll hit create there. We've got all of our items here. What I am going to do is I'm going to assign a category to these helper entities as well. I'm going to create a category called Pomodoro, and we will just add that there and save that. And I'm going to assign all of these Pomodoro helper entities to this Pomodoro category. And this is just a new thing that came in a recent release of Home Assistant that helps us to organize our entities in the Home Assistant UI. So all of those are now added in the Pomodoro category. So now we're going to set up some entities, and I've got a very cuddly cat here who really wants to be involved. I'm going to head over to settings, and we're going to need to set up some automations. Create an automation. I'm going to create a new automation. We want to now use this automation to start the timer. So I want to add a trigger, and I'll go with device. And for the devices, I want Pomodoro. So this is the Pomodoro button that I paired, the Zigbee button. And when we get a short press on the Pomodoro button, I want a trigger. And I also want to add another trigger for entity, and I'm looking for the state of the so I want this Pomodoro start timer input button as well. And if this changes to any state, trigger the automation, either when we get a short button press or we get the virtual button press. We're not going to add any conditions here. I'm going to make all of my conditions work in the action section here. So I'm going to add an action, and I want to set up an if-then action. Conditionally execute an action. So our first condition that I need to make sure that the state of our Pomodoro timer, needs to be idle. Otherwise, if the state of the Pomodoro timer is not idle, it's going to just start the timer, and we could very easily just trigger multiple timers to start and not actually get anywhere. So we're first checking to make sure that the timer is idle. I'm going to collapse that down, and then we're going to add another action. And we're going to nest in another if-then action in here. So if the state of our Pomodoro next task is Pomodoro, the action that we want to run then is timer start. We're going for a duration of 00:25:00. If you don't put the leading 00, it will run the timer for possibly 25 hours rather than 25 minutes. So just be aware of that. And our target is the Pomodoro timer. So if our next task is Pomodoro, we're going to start a 25-minute timer. What I'm going to do with this now, though, is I'm going to grab this if block and the 3-dot stack here, and I'm going to copy this. And then I'm going to collapse it down, and I'm going to add an action and paste it. I'm going to add an action again and paste it again. So what we've got now that I've pasted that 2 more times, we've got these 3 conditionally executed action items, but they're all going to be identical. So what we need to do is change our if statement here. Instead of Pomodoro, I want short break in this one here. And if it is a short break, our timer changes to 5 minutes. And I will save that there. And then the last one in here is if our next task is a long break, then our timer going to be for 30 minutes. So with that one automation, if the Pomodoro timer is idle and the next task is Pomodoro, we start a 25-minute timer. If the next task is instead a short break, we start a 5-minute timer. Or if the next task is a long break, we'll start a 30-minute timer. So 3 if statements nested inside another if statement to get this set up. And now if I save that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to head over to, I've set up this dashboard Pomodoro demo, and we've got the Pomodoro graphic there just to remind you what it does. So we've got our Pomodoro next task is start. So we've got this timer here, and by default it's 25 minutes. If I change this to short break and click start timer, you'll see now that the timer is running for 5 minutes. And if I go in here and we'll cancel that so that it goes back to idle, if I change this now to long break and press start, we've got 30 minutes. And again, I'll just cancel that timer and we'll go for a Pomodoro press, and we've got 25 minutes there. That's all working there as we need it to with the timers. So that should work, and I'll just test that my button works as well, and it might be a little bit out of range. There we go, it just kicked off, so Pomodoro just started there. So we will cancel that now. Okay, so we've got the start timer process working. What I need to do now is what happens when the timer ends. So we'll go back to settings. I'm going to run this ESP home update, and then we'll just go back to automations and scenes again. I'm going to search for Pomodoro, and what I'm going to do, create a category called Pomodoro, and we'll assign that to the Pomodoro category. Again, just to kind of keep everything tidy. So we've got our Pomodoro start timer. I'm going to go to create automation, create a new automation, and we'll click add trigger, and we're looking for state, when the state of an entity or attribute changes. And the entity I want to look for is the Pomodoro timer. I want that when it changes from any state, I want it to change to idle. Anytime that timer finishes, it should change to an idle state. That's really the only trigger. Again, I'm not going to use any conditions here. I'm going to do all of the conditioning inside our actions. So the first thing I'm going to do is add an action. And again, we're going for an if then action. I'm going to add a condition, and the state of our Pomodoro next task. If that is Pomodoro, then what do we need to do at the end of a 25-minute Pomodoro timer? Well, the first thing that we need to do is counter increment, and we're going to choose our completed Pomodoros and our total Pomodoros. So we're going to bump both of those up by 1. I'm just going to save that there as well. We also want to look for what the number of that was. So we're going to conditionally execute an action if the numeric state of the Pomodoro completed Pomodoros is below 4, and I'll just collapse that. So if completed Pomodoros is below 4, and I'll add an else there, what our action is going to be is to input select, and we're going to select an input select option on our next task, and we're going for short break. If the completed Pomodoros is not below 4, our next action, input select, and select on the next task is going to be a long break. So if it was a Pomodoro task that was completed, then we are going to increment both our completed and total Pomodoros counters. And if the completed Pomodoros is less than 4, then we're going to change our next task to a short break. If it was 4, then we're going to change our next task to a long break. And the other thing that we're going to do here with the long break is I'm going to go to counter reset and choose the entity for completed Pomodoros. So after you've completed that 4th Pomodoro, we're resetting that counter, but we're leaving the total Pomodoros alone just so that we can count how many Pomodoros we complete. If it wasn't a Pomodoro, so it was one of the break items, then the only place we can go from either a long break or a short break is back to Pomodoro. So our else item here is then going to be, so input select, and we're going to select Pomodoro from the next task item here. Okay, that should be all of that logic. Let's just save that and I will test that out real quick. We'll head over to Pomodoro demo. And so we've got 0 completed Pomodoros. I'm going to start the timer and I'm just going to finish the timer, and we see that it has incremented by 1, and we've got total Pomodoros also incremented by 1. I will do that again for the 5-minute break. We'll finish. So that is working to change to the 5-minute break. 5 and then finish, and that's changed back to short break. So we'll just keep doing this. Finish, press, finish, press, finish, finish. So we just got to 4 and it reset the counter, and now we've got a long break here. So if we press that, we get a 30-minute countdown. And then if I finish that, so it's changed back to Pomodoro. So that automation is all working fine, but we don't have anything happening to then send us an alert. That's the last thing we need to do, is change our timer end. So I'm going to edit the entity here. So we've got that. We're going to add another action. And the first thing I'm going to do here is run in parallel, because I want to do a couple of things. And I want them to all run at the same time rather than one after the other. First thing I'm going to do is put in an if then. So if the condition and the state, and I want state of person.Stewart is at home, then we want to turn on a light. Our target is going to be Miros. What have we got? So I don't actually have my Miros Smart Ambient Lights set up in this instance of Home Assistant, which is a bit of a problem, but I'll use my desk lights, and we can do things like we'll just give it a color, and we'll go blue. That should be fine. So let's go red. So we'll tap save on that. So it's going to turn on the desk lamps and make them red. And that's only if I am at home. So I'll collapse that, and I'm going to add one other action, and this action is going to run in parallel. I'm going to call a service. So the service I want to call is notify.mobile app and Stewie's iPhone. And we've seen this before. We've done quite a few of these. I'm going to go to our message, and I'm going to put in your Pomodoro timer is finished. Time for and I'll do some templating here in a minute. I'm going to go in title Pomodoro, and we're going to go to data. I'm going to go to push and sound and name default, critical 1 and volume. Now, I'm not going to put this to full volume, and I'm put it, for the purposes of demonstration, I'll put it at half volume, 0.5. But in my testing, about a quarter, so 0.25, was about right for me. It shouldn't be too obtrusive if I happen to run this when I'm in the office, but it should also still at least alert me enough to get my attention. What I'm going to do here, though, is I'm going to add some templating to this. So in the message, if I put in 2 curly braces, it's going to complain that the visual editor is not supported anymore because we are templating. And what I want in here is the state. And inside state, I want to get input select dot Pomodoro next task. And what that's going to do, so because we have changed our Pomodoro next task to what we want to do next, it's going to say your Pomodoro timer has finished. Time for a Pomodoro short break or long break. So I will save that, and I will start recording the screen on my phone. So just here on my iPhone, I'm just going to test this part of the automation. So I'll tap run, and undefined state is, that's because the keyword here is states with an S, and we will run that. And so we got your Pomodoro timer has finished. Time for a Pomodoro just showed up on my phone. So now if I head back to my Pomodoro demo, I can start my timer, and it's a 25-minute timer. And when I finish that, we should get an alert. Your Pomodoro timer has finished. Time for a short break. That's good. So short break was the next thing, and we will run through that, and it's a 5-minute timer. Finish. We will start it again. It's a 25-minute timer, and we'll finish. I will press the button here. We've got a 5-minute timer for a short break. We'll finish. Run that. 25-minute timer. We'll finish. Press the button again. 5-minute timer. Press the button again. Finish the button again. And so now we're on a long break. And if I finish that, your Pomodoro timer has finished. Time for a Pomodoro. So that should all now be everything we need set up for a Pomodoro timer. And we have even got a counter for the total number of Pomodoros. The only thing that I might find that I need to add here is I think I should add a reset to this for, say, at midnight every night, we'll reset that counter. So I'll just really quickly do that now. We'll go to automations and scenes. We'll create an automation, new automation, add trigger, time at a specific time at 12 a.m., add an action, counter.reset, and choose entity, total Pomodoros. What I might do as well here is reset the completed Pomodoros, because it is entirely possible to not complete a block of 4. So that's something to be aware of as well. So I'll save that. We'll go Pomodoro and a reset counters at midnight. And we'll save that. So the other thing that we could do here as well is add another trigger of a device, and we could go to our Pomodoro button, and we could set that to, let's say, a long release, and we'll save that there, and go back to our Pomodoro demo. And so if I will just complete a couple of Pomodoros here so that there's a count. We'll press that, finish that, and we'll press it again, and finish that. And you've just heard the alerts coming on my watch now as well for the Pomodoro timers because I wasn't recording my screen on my phone. It's started pushing the sound. So now we've got 10 total Pomodoros, and we've got 2 in our short-term completed Pomodoros. What I'm going to do is press and hold the button, finish that, and if I press and hold the button and then release, that's not doing what I expect it to. We'll go to settings and we'll go to automations and scenes, Pomodoro. So I'm going to assign these to the Pomodoro category just to keep them all neatly organized in my UI, and reset counters at midnight. Why did you not trigger? So Pomodoro button, honestly, let's go double tap and then there. And then if I double tap, okay, so that triggered that time. So now if I go back to Pomodoro demo, those have now reset to 0. So we've got a way to start our timer from our button, reset those counters from our button as well. So the only thing I guess we should probably do here as well, if we reset the counters, we also need to reset the task. So I'll do that. Add action, input, select, and we'll go to POM mode. We didn't choose the entity. So now we go back to our Pomodoro demo, double tap, and it changed that. So that is good. So what I might do, I'll go to automations and scenes, and in my start timer automation, if I go to the bottom here, so if our timer is idle, I'm going to add an else and add an action. I'm going to go timer, cancel. So if we press the button again, short press the button again, it's then going to cancel the timer. So we'll save that now. We didn't choose our timer, so I need to make sure I do that before saving it. Head back to our Pomodoro demo, So with that else now added to the condition, when we press the button and the timer is running, it cancels the timer and it will also send us a push notification. I could add some additional logic around this to make sure that if we cancel the timer, instead of it counting it as a Pomodoro and sending us an alert, that maybe it would instead just cancel the timer and not progress anything. But I think I'm okay with it as it stands right now. I'm actually really happy with the way I've set that up now. Now, I will say that I did spend a reasonable amount of time before shooting testing this out in my production instance. I've got to say I'm pretty happy so far with the outcome, and I will be testing it out in my real life over the next few weeks, and hopefully it's all going to work really well and help me with my productivity. Now, I'll also look at writing up the instructions for this project and posting them onto my website. So if you want to set up your own and maybe following along the videos, not the way that you are able to work, perhaps the write-up on the website is an easier way to go about handling it for you. So head over there, and if I've not already posted the instructions by the time you're watching this, it hopefully won't be too far away. So that was creating a Pomodoro timer in Home Assistant. I'm really looking forward to using this setup to try to improve my productivity when I'm working, and especially staying on track instead of falling down a hyper-focused rabbit hole. Definitely when I'm writing scripts for these videos, because I will say I get stuck on that a lot. Of course, we could use other methods of prompting at the end of those timers as well, such as using our Alexa media player integration to make an announcement on one of the Amazon devices around the house, or maybe even playing or pausing some music that's playing in the media player. It really is choose your own adventure when it comes to how you want to be prompted for your setup. That's all we have for this video, and I do hope that it's helped you in your home automation journey. Be sure to drop a comment down below with a home automation idea that you'd like to see me cover in a future video. Don't forget to follow Hive Mind Automation on Instagram and Facebook. And if you like this video, hit the thumbs up button down below to give it a like. If you're not already subscribed, now's a great time to consider changing that. And while you're at it, if you hit the bell icon, you'll get a notification when I release new videos, which is normally each week. Lastly, if you like what I do here and you want help to support the channel, there's a Buy Me a Coffee link in the video description below. Any contribution you make through Buy Me a Coffee does get put towards making more and hopefully better content for you to enjoy. Don't forget to check out my website, hivemindautomation.com.au. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Stu from Hive Mind Automation, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.